Hey there, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. This is Talking to Myself, the part of the day where I talk to myself about things that I was thinking the night before while laying in bed. Shout out, of course, to all 1,600 of you who are subscribed at the time of making this video. Shout out to my boy Lee DeLeon. Shout out to my boy Darren from Cardinal Camera. Cardinal Camera, I actually ordered my 18mm 1.4 from them. He hit me up and said, hey, I've got one of these in stock. I ordered on a Friday. It was put in the mail on Friday. I got it on a Monday. They're not from Texas. This was shipped a few states away using UPS. So shout out to him because I got this. I've been loving this lens, but yeah, he hooked me up, and not even a hookup on price. I paid full price for this, but it's just nice being able to get with a small mom and pop type shop and then get your stuff immediately in the mail. I understand you can use B&H, but whenever it comes to them and their coverage, the quickness of shipping, the customer support, it was a fantastic experience. So much so that I wanted to shout them out, even though I'm not getting anything for it. So shout out to Cardinal Camera for the hookup. I'm for sure going to be buying all my lenses in the future through them. Rest in peace to B&H. Shout out as well to Ona. I got this amazing sweet Ona the Bowery bag right here. This is now basically my everyday carry bag. I think that's my little hat stretcher for my cowboy hats. This thing's fantastic. It fits a couple of small bodies or a small body and a few lenses. In here I've got like a couple XC4s. Fantastic bag, but this is basically my everyday carry bag when I'm dressing a little bit nicer and not like this. And so shout out to that. As well, shout out to Fujifilm US for sending me this right here, which is the 10-24 lens, the WROIS-R lens. I'll tell you exactly why I got that lens in a little bit. Shout out to Dorian Coleman if I haven't said that. Big shout out to him because he just posted a new video on YouTube. Go support him. That's Dorian Coleman, Dorian Coleman. A great Fujifilm shooter, great photographer, period. Started off on Sony, Nikon, moved his way to Fujifilm. He's only been shooting for about 3 years, dude, and just the fact that he has such a grip on the art and everything like that, a lot of inspirations come from painting for him, and you see that in the art that he makes. And as well, he just makes great videos, very informative, especially about Fujicon lenses and about, it just really puts your mind in perspective. If you're a street photography shooter, you'll really love him. Getting right into it, basically what I have with me here, of course, the 18mm 1.4 and this 10-24, I have these two out. I purchased this with my own money. Now, a lot of you know I love the 18mm f2, but the reason why I went with the 18 1.4 is because I know that this will resolve the full 40 megapixels of the XH2 whenever I purchase that. So even though I love the 18mm f2, those are the older lenses in Fujifilm, and there's just always a chance that if I'm using that, because I use 18mm a lot in my professional work. So I'll put a couple photos up on the screen of stuff that I did recently, but you guys know even whenever it came to shooting sports, I use the 18mm, which is a 28mm focal length, a lot for some documentary type looks. I use this a lot. I also use this for street photography whenever I'm going around and just walking. And so I thought, hey, Fujifilm, can you send me the 10-24 WR? It's weather resistant. And also it is basically a 16-35 equivalent. If you know that about Canon 16-35 f4, and you know how amazing that is because you did architecture or landscape, you are going to love this lens. Nearly identical in size, just a little bit taller over here on the 10-24. Whenever it comes to width, they're nearly identical in size as well, just a little bit wider in the bell end here on the 10-24. But the reason why I got it was because on my 18mm f1.4, a lot of times I'm shooting at f4 anywhere between there to f11. And since that's the case, I thought, man, I wonder if this would be a great option as well for someone like me. I just love a 28mm. I like prime, so that's why I'm sticking with the 18. But is this a good purchase? Nearly, I think for the same price, $9.99. This one may be cheaper for someone who wants to shoot a lot of street, a lot of landscape. I'm gonna say right away, just from messing with a little bit, this thing is very, very sharp. So this is a very viable and a very good option for someone who's in street photography and you want to have wider angle lenses. I mean, basically you have your 24mm effective focal length and you have a 35 and a 28mm effective focal length in this one lens. And if you're shooting street and you're stopped down a lot, this is just a really nice option. Also, you could also get some nice creative shots going all the way up to 15, 16-ish millimeter focal length. Now, you may not be the person who's very intrigued by that But if you're also someone who shoots landscape, this is a really good all-around lens. Now again, with the size of this is very similar in the feel and the weight of the 18mm f1.4, and I would even say most likely the kit lens 18 to 55. Really good upgrade. Again, if you're shooting street and you're someone who's shooting maybe some documentary stuff or some landscape, it's a very good option, especially with the WR. It's OIS, which is fantastic as well. If you're shooting on a body that doesn't have optical image stabilization, that's pretty much a plus. But I've been very pleased with this lens right here. I can't say enough good things about the 18mm 1.4. Fantastic build, which you come to expect from Fujifilm. Even on their budget lenses, even on their XC budget lenses, which are plastic, they are built very, very sturdy. So there's not really much to say about that. I can't really say that, oh, it's built well and that should be a reason that you should gush over them. All Fujifilm lenses are built well. Even more so, even the Viltrox, the third-party lenses, are very much so built well, so it's kind of a given. But aperture ring's clicky. It's got a nice auto aperture lock on here as well. Same thing on the 10 to 24. I'm excited to use this more. I've got a couple of gigs that are coming up in Las Vegas as well as in Fort Worth, and some things that I'm doing this weekend for personal projects, as well as shooting for some residential clients. So with that, this will have a lot of use. This will be seeing quite a bit of love over the next few days, so I'll make sure to bring you images to show you that as well. The other thing that I want to look at is Fujifilm was so kindly to send me not only this 10 to 24, and I not only did buy that 18mm 1.4, but I also own, a lot of you know, the OG, and I think is the GOAT 50mm lens for Fujifilm, and the GOAT lens period, the 35mm 1.4. This is on my XE4, and I've designated it because it has a hand grip, it has the thumb grip, and I also put some tape to cover that way I don't, forget anything. This right here is my Fujifilm XE4 with a 35mm f1.4 on there. And many of you know, Fujifilm has just recently released the 33mm f1.4 as well. This is not an identical one-to-one copy. This is technically an upgrade. This is 52mm effective focal length, I believe, and this is a 30mm or 50mm effective focal length. A couple things to note. Again, the reason why I got an XE4 from Fujifilm, they sent me this one, was so I could show you exactly how it fits on a camera compared to each other. So if you're looking, these are both silver XE4s. You'll notice with the lens hood, you no longer get the lens hood that is squared at the front, like with a 35 1.4. You now get the rounded hood, plastic lens hood, so no more metal lens hood. So you'll notice it sticks up just a smidgen more whenever it comes to that. Now the height without the lens hood is actually a little bit different. It's not as dramatic, it's not as drastic, but there is still a difference, and the 33mm 1.4 is still a scotch larger as well, but not that much. Now when it comes to weight in hand, there is not much difference between those two, and I have to give Fujifilm basically a pat on the back for the fact that this lens is not as heavy as a 35 1.4. Now a lot of you guys have asked about this and if I'm ever going to get this lens. Now I do have a filter on the front of this one because this is usually my video lens, and this has a Tiffin black pro mist filter, which I only use for video. I don't use black pro mist or glimmer glass whenever it comes to photo, but whenever it comes to the width of the front, you'll notice again the 33 1.4 is a smidgen thicker. When it comes to the front elements are actually very much so the same size, but you are going from a 52mm filter thread to a 58mm filter thread. Now the reason why I'm going to AB these, I actually have a shoot that is more of a studio portrait shoot coming up pretty soon with a model, and he's got nice luscious hair, giving me total Jason Momoa vibes, and since I want to be stock easy every single day of my life, I figure why not go the stock easy route and just, link up with a dude with nice flowing hair and befriend him. So that's exactly what I've done, but I'm actually going to put these side by side. A/B these. Now I'm not going to pixel peep the way that you guys want to pixel peep and start talking about this, that, and the other. It's going to be in a studio session, studio environment. I'm not going to shoot trees, not going to look for chromatic aberrations, because here's the thing. Google and learn how to research how to remove chromatic aberrations and red and purple and green fringing, whatever you want, or ghosting from your images in Lightroom or in Capture One. Very, very simple. It's something that takes a few seconds, and if you learn how to do that, it'll make your life a lot better. The two biggest differences between these lenses isn't the fact that one's a 33 and one's a 35. It's not the fact that one's weather resistant and one's not weather resistant, although those are big things that you have to think about. The biggest difference between these two lenses for me is the fact that this one can resolve at 40 megapixels or above 40 megapixels, means it'll be compatible with the X-H2, and this one, just like the 18mm f2, resolves at more around, if the math is correct, 20 megapixels. Now, not an issue whenever you're shooting on a 26 megapixel XE4 because you're not really seeing that much difference, but when you double the resolution of it, it's not going to really hurt your image anywhere until you blow these things up. And me, I am someone who is now being tasked with blowing up images not only on giant billboards, but also life-size cutouts of people, as well as backdrops and banners. And with that, because I want to use a 40 megapixel X-H2 because it'll be a lot smaller and a lot cheaper than spending, you know, however much money on a 33 megapixel A7 III, $2,600, and then have to buy the lenses. And then there's the fact that the A7 IV, Fronos Photo did a test on it, and it only shoots at 6 frames per second mechanical and electronic, unless you're shooting in completely compressed. And at that point, why'd you buy the 33 megapixel sensor if you have to compress it? It's basically an EOS R in that respect when it comes to frames per second, but I won't touch on the A7 IV right now. But yeah, so it'll cause issues there. And so the thing is, there is a chance, I'm for sure going to keep 35 1.4. Period. This is probably going to be one of my personal lenses. That and the 18mm are probably going to be the lenses that I take on this, which is more of a personal camera everywhere I go, especially for vacation. When it comes to on the X-H1, there is a chance that I'll move to the 33 1.4, the 50 f2, and the 50-140 as my lenses that sit primarily on my X-H1. Again, this is not a big lens. This is a lens that I could probably put on my XE4 and personal one and it wouldn't bother me. But at the same time, I've built my look, the characteristic of my photos for friends, family, personal work, etc., using these 35 millimeter 1.4, and so I love that. When it comes to other things that are different about it, there's not really much else. This does have an aperture lock ring on it, similar to the 18mm 1.4. When it comes to the size, the 18mm 1.4 is actually just a tad bit bigger. It's actually wider, and that's it. The height is going to sit just about the same. Again, fantastic lenses that Fujifilm has been putting out. I am a little bit more relieved that after getting them in hand, I had the 18mm 1.4 in hand, and that is, you know, over 2 times the size of a 33 1.4. Or the 18mm f2, but I am happy that the fact that the 33 1.4 and the 18 1.4 are similar in size, because that means it's still a pretty small package. Again, the 18mm 1.4 helped cure my gas whenever it came to the Leica Q2 and even the Leica Q, even buying that the cheaper older version, because it's amazing lens. It shoots fantastically, great colors, focuses quick, everything that everyone's already told you that blah 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 that the people act like matters. But the 28mm focal length is the only thing that I really care about. So it fits that need, and the fact that on the XE4 with this thumb grip and with the grip right here for handling, it's just great fit. But this is still really small. This actually sits on me majority of the time, just chilling there. So I can't wait. I'm gonna remake another strap for this one. For those of you that have orders for straps from me, I will get those to you soon. I actually just had to order another hide of leather because I did not have enough, and the pieces that I just cut yesterday, they're not full length pieces. They're actually shorter. So unless someone wants a camera that instead of a strap that'll make the camera sit here, it'll sit here, let me know. Maybe someone who's shorter in stature, that would be a good one for you. But I'm probably going to use those, as I consider them scrap, on this camera right here, and make a couple of straps for it, maybe ones that I could wrap around my wrist, and I'll play around with something to make some prototypes of straps that maybe people will like in the end. But basically, to round it all about, I have the 33 1.4 in hand. From playing around and shooting with this for just a little bit, I've taken some shots and I already put them into a camera, or actually put them into my iPad to look at them side by side with 33 and the 35, shooting the exact same thing. When it comes to shooting still objects and everything of that nature, These two lenses, the 18 1.4 and the 33 1.4, render nearly identical because they have the same formula to the 70-300 and the 50mm 1.0, meaning you have a lot more micro contrast and you have a lot more depth. Part of that, I'm seeing that is because I shot so heavily for all my life with the 35 1.4 and the 18mm f2 that I'm seeing the benefits of a little bit more clarity in resolution and lenses that are able to resolve higher. Now, if I'm putting these up against a 50mm 50 to 140 or against the 90 f2, is it that much of a difference? Not really, but there is a difference in the micro contrast. These both have very nice punch to them, and so I would, they're just good lenses. They're great lenses. Do I think that this lens right here, if I sell my 35 1.4, I'll probably get $350 to $400 for it? Do I think this lens is $300 better than this lens? No, I don't. I don't think it's $300 better than 35 1.4. But there is just the benefit of the fact that it will be able to do more for me with the XH2. So that's one thing that runs around in my mind. Another thing that I will say about this is you will be able to see a difference whenever I use these in studio session. I just want to make that very, very clear. There's a difference in the bokeh, number one. If I was shooting these outdoors, you'd see a difference there too. When it comes to separation, the bokeh, the background blur, and any kind of swirl, this has a look identical to the 50mm 1.0, which does have a distinct look. So there will be a difference between the 35 1.4 and the 33 1.4. Regardless, shooting at 1.4 and then stopping up, there will be a difference in the look. Another area we're going to see a different look is the way that it renders highlights wrapping around people's skins. This is going to give you a softer look whenever it comes to highlights in people's skin as well as backlit situations, more angelic. A lot of people ask me, hey, what filter are you using on your photos when you shoot with 35 1.4? I do not shoot with a filter on my 35 1.4 unless it's video, but for photos, I do not have a filter on this. That is the natural halation effect. That is the natural bloom effect of the 35 1.4. The 33mm will not have that. It'll be a lot more clinical, number one, and number two, it'll be a lot more punchy in the contrast, which means it won't have the exact same washed out, kind of wrapped in light kind of look 35 1.4 is. For me, just off the bat, because I've already messed with these lenses for a little bit, and I put them in some lighting situations, and I'll give you more whenever I come out with the full detail about this. This lens right here versus this lens, on anything other than whenever the 40 megapixel sensor comes out, you're not going to have $300 worth of a better image from the 33 1.4. What you are going to have though is you are going to have a lot more micro contrast, which is going to help itself in giving you technically more detail in your shadows, etc. And it's going to do well in portraits if you're going for that look to where you want it to be a little bit sharper and a little bit tougher on the edges. I think of Leica and Nikon images. They have a lot more detail because of where their color cast is sent. But if you're looking at more Fujifilm and Canon, to where people talk about, oh, Canon has a nice look for portraits and things, it's actually brought about by the fact that they pushed theirs to more magenta, and on people that have more magenta or a fairer skinned or a lighter skinned people, that helps them out with covering up wrinkles. This has the exact same effect whenever it comes to that. That's the difference between these two. This is going to give you a softer, more of a like as if you have a diffusion filter look on there compared to this. Now, when I take my images, I am not going to be pixel peeping into sharpness and corners and things like that because I'm taking portraits. So let me make this perfectly clear. When I'm taking these, I will not highlight those things. You will have to do it by yourself. Get on a computer, put it on TV, and watch this, because there will not be that much difference in a portrait session other than the way the light wraps around them and maybe the softness of skin. But that is always something you can take care of in post. So you still can get that same look from here versus here, but it'll look a little bit more organic in this lens because it's done in camera. But I'm probably not going to pixel peep. I'm not going to blow up to 200, 300% because I already know this lens is not going to be as sharp as the 33 1.4. The 56 1.2, the 35 1.4, the 18mm f2, they are not going to be sharper than any lens ever since the f2 came out. period. Ever since the f2 lenses came out, these lenses are being left in the dust when it comes to sharpness all the way throughout an image. But what's different is the fact that this formula is an older formula, so it gives you a distinct artistic look. The same reason why people shoot with manual focus, old vintage lenses, and they adapt them. It's the same thing with this. We still have autofocus. This, if you can get this lens for $325, $300, $350, is a still of a lens. And I would still say, if you're not going to upgrade to the XH2 or the XT5 or whatever anytime soon when they have 40 megapixel sensors, this may not be a lens that you need. But for someone like me, it potentially is, because again, I have a specific purpose of using these to blow up and crop in on images in web, as well as for posters, as well as for billboards. That is in my job description right now. So 33-1.4, I'm excited to use it because I know it's going to be a good ass lens. I know it's going to be nice. I've already shot with this. I've shot with the 50mm 1.0, and I shot with the 70-300, and the formulas are beautiful. They're fantastic. I've already said it. The 50mm 1.0 from Fujifilm is the second best lens I think I've ever used for portraits, behind the 50mm 1.2 from Canon. Is it my favorite portrait lens? No, it's not. That's a 90mm f2, but that takes into compression and everything else. But whenever it comes to just a nice, natural looking portrait focal length, this is going to be a fantastic lens. And for $799, it's a damn bargain, honestly, compared to what lens prices are, everywhere else. So that's it for that. Making sure I'm still recording. I'm good. Shout out to Carhu again. Shout out to Lee DeLeon. Shout out to my boy Darren with Cardinal Camera. Shout out to Cardinal Camera. I don't know who the owner is, but you know what, man? You're in a good business, and I appreciate that. Shout out to Fujifilm for sending me the 10-24 and this 33mm 1.4. I truly do appreciate it. The vibes are back together. And shout out to my 18 1.4 and my 35 1.4. These things come in clutch. And again, a lot of my work that's being done right now is being done on these two lenses, and I truly do appreciate things that they render for me and how great the images are. That's basically it. Don't have anything else to say. Don't have anything why. It's just a first look and an impression of them. I didn't unbox these because it looks the same as every other Fujifilm lens. There's nothing special. I don't need to tell you about the aperture ring. You know what an aperture lock ring is. You don't need to look at it. When it comes to the throw on the 10-24, it's very short because it's only going from a 16 to 35mm effective focal length, and the focus rings on on all these lenses are not the best. It's Fujifilm, but they'll get the job done. So when it comes to video, focusing is smooth. If you're shooting a static subject, you're going to be just fine. If you're shooting a moving subject, it may suck if you're focusing manually, but that's basically it. I got this nice stitch horse, so I'll be able to stitch more stuff soon. Again, if you ordered straps from me, go look at Peak Design, or I'm using the Peak Design Anchor links, that whole system, and I'm putting them on leather straps similar to what Clever Design Co. did. I was inspired by the fact that they charge a lot of money, and I didn't want to spend that much money. So if you order one from me, I am waiting on a hide to come in so that I can start cutting those and then sending them out to you. And so just so you're aware, I will get those out as soon as possible, and I'll give you updates all the time along the way. Hope you guys have a good one. See ya.